Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be tackling a task that many DIYers find daunting: replacing wheel bearings. Now, I know what you're thinking, wheel bearings? That sounds complicated. But trust me, it's not as difficult as it seems. With the right tools and a little bit of patience, you can easily replace your wheel bearings at home. In this video, I'll walk you through the entire process step by step. We'll cover everything from removing the old bearings to installing the new ones. I'll also share some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. So, if you're ready to learn how to replace your wheel bearings like a pro, then stick around. Wheel bearings are essential to the safe operation of any vehicle. These small components primarily support the load of a mounted wheel/tire assembly, working to reduce friction during wheel rotation. They allow the wheels to spin smoothly while also supporting the weight of the vehicle. There are two main types of wheel bearings: ball bearings and roller bearings. Ball bearings are typically used in smaller vehicles, while roller bearings are more common in larger vehicles and trucks. Both types of bearings are designed to withstand high loads and speeds. A bad wheel bearing can cause a variety of problems, including a grinding or growling noise. This is the most common symptom of a bad wheel bearing. The noise will typically get louder as you drive faster. Vibration in the steering wheel or seat. This can be caused by a loose or damaged bearing. Uneven tire wear. A bad wheel bearing can cause the tire to wobble, which can lead to uneven wear. Difficulty steering. A bad wheel bearing can make it difficult to steer the vehicle, especially at high speeds. If you notice any of these symptoms, it's important to have your wheel bearings checked by a qualified mechanic as soon as possible. Replacing wheel bearings is a relatively complex task that requires specialized tools and knowledge. If you're not comfortable doing this yourself, it's best to take your vehicle to a mechanic. However, if you're feeling adventurous, here are the basic steps involved in replacing wheel bearings. Remove the wheel. The first step is to remove the wheel from the vehicle. This will give you access to the hub and the wheel bearing. Remove the hub. The hub is the metal part that the wheel is attached to. It's held in place by a few bolts. Once you've removed the bolts, you can pull the hub off of the axle. Remove the old wheel bearing. The wheel bearing is located inside the hub. To remove it, you'll need to use a special tool called a bearing puller. Install the new wheel bearing. Once you've removed the old wheel bearing, you can install the new one. Make sure to grease the bearing before you install it. Reassemble the hub and wheel. Once the new wheel bearing is installed, you can reassemble the hub and wheel. Make sure to tighten all of the bolts to the proper torque specifications. Replacing wheel bearings is an important maintenance task that should be performed regularly. If you're not comfortable doing this yourself, be sure to take your vehicle to a qualified mechanic. Wheel bearings are essential components of your car's suspension system, allowing the wheels to spin smoothly and safely. However, like any mechanical part, they can wear out over time, leading to a range of problems. Symptoms of bad wheel bearings: grinding or roaring noise. This is the most common symptom, often becoming louder as you accelerate or turn. Vibration in the steering wheel or seat. This can be felt at various speeds and may worsen with acceleration. Loose or wobbly wheel. If the bearing is severely worn, the wheel may feel loose or wobbly when you shake it. ABS or traction control light activation. In some cases, a failing wheel bearing can trigger these warning lights. Causes of wheel bearing failure: normal wear and tear. Over time, the bearings can simply wear out due to friction and fatigue. Lack of lubrication. Insufficient lubrication can lead to increased friction and premature wear. Damage from impact. Hitting a pothole or curb can damage the bearing and shorten its lifespan. Water contamination. Water can enter the bearing and cause rust and corrosion. Here are some practical tips for dealing with wheel bearing problems. Don't ignore the symptoms. If you notice any of the symptoms listed above, don't ignore them. Get your car checked by a mechanic as soon as possible. Replace the bearing as soon as possible. A bad wheel bearing can cause further damage to your car, so it's important to replace it as soon as possible. Get both bearings replaced at the same time. If one wheel bearing is bad, the other one is likely to fail soon as well. It's usually more cost-effective to replace both bearings at the same time. Use high-quality bearings. When replacing your wheel bearings, use high-quality bearings from a reputable manufacturer. This will help to ensure that they last longer. Get the job done by a professional. Replacing wheel bearings can be a complex job, so it's best to leave it to a professional mechanic. Replacing wheel bearings is a complex job that requires specialized tools and knowledge. If you're not comfortable doing it yourself, it's best to take your car to a professional mechanic. However, if you're confident in your mechanical abilities, here are the general steps involved in replacing wheel bearings. Gather the necessary tools and materials. You'll need a jack stands, lug wrench, socket set, torque wrench, hammer, chisel, and new wheel bearings. Raise the car and remove the wheel. Use the jack and jack stands to safely raise the car and remove the wheel from the affected side. Remove the brake caliper and rotor. This will give you access to the wheel hub and bearing. Remove the wheel hub and bearing assembly. This may require removing a retaining nut or bolt. Press out the old bearing. Use a bearing press or a hammer and chisel to remove the old bearing from the hub. Press in the new bearing. Use a bearing press to install the new bearing into the hub. Reassemble the wheel hub and bearing assembly. Make sure to tighten all nuts and bolts to the correct torque specifications. Reinstall the brake caliper and rotor. Mount the wheel and lower the car. Test drive the car. Make sure there are no unusual noises or vibrations. It's important to note that this is just a general overview of the process. The specific steps may vary depending on the make and model of your car. Always consult a repair manual or a qualified mechanic for detailed instructions. Wheel bearings are important components of your car's suspension system. If you notice any problems with your wheel bearings, don't ignore them. Get your car checked by a mechanic as soon as possible.